introduce you our special guest, Mr. Nithin Kamath. He's the founder and CEO from Zerodha. Over to you, Mr. Jain.
Thank you so much, Vani. Hi, Nithin. Welcome to the Fireside Chat. There's this. I was telling you a little bit before we began that there are not too many unicorns that I can think of. So you told me that Zoho is another one. So there are not too many unicorns that we can think of that actually have no investors. So what made you go on this journey of not having an investor?
Yeah. No, I mean, I think it's it's actually right place, right time. When we started off in 2010, that was probably one of the worst times to start broking as a business. So raising capital was like a no-go of sorts. And in the first 2 years, we had already turned profitable, right? So around 2013, 14, when we could potentially raise money, I mean, by then I had kind of started interacting with the startup ecosystem and kind of knew how VC funded businesses have to work, right? And we realized that one of the edge that we had as a business even early on was how nimble we are as a business, and that nimbleness came because of the organizational structure, right? As in this nimbleness in terms of product decisions, in terms of how quickly we roll off new products, or ability to take risks. And we realized that is really our edge on competition, and we kind of knew that if we raise money, then you end up getting obligated to investor capital, and then you have to start now chasing revenue and growth, versus what we were chasing, right from the start of the business. What we've been chasing has always been, for us, every trader is almost a person like us, so we are essentially building a product for ourselves, right? So like, just to give an example, not a single person at Zerodha has a revenue target, right? And I don't think there will be another financial services firm who can claim something like this.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
And the reason we don't have it is because we know that if we put a target, someone's going to missell something, right? And we can afford to not have a target because there is no growth revenue that we are chasing, right? And so this has worked well for a business. I think the challenge was to say no to money over the last 2-3 years, because those notional values, when people suddenly associate, say, I'll give you a check of this much, then saying no to that, it becomes a lot more challenging. But we stuck the course because we're enjoying what we're doing, and I think no money makes it a lot more fun.
So we've got I think 3,000-4,000 people who are watching you right now, and I'm sure a lot of them would be bootstrapped companies who at some point are looking at being able to raise money. Is your sort of lesson to them saying that try and be bootstrapped as long as you can, and getting an investor is really asking for trouble?
No, not really. I see. The thing is, like, I actively invest in other startups through a fund called Rain Matter. So I wouldn't do it if I didn't think invested funded startups can do well. No, I think what I think everyone needs to keep in mind is that investors' money brings certain obligations, right?
Absolutely.
And not everyone enjoys those obligations. And not every business can be built bootstrap. I mean, if you were to ask me, Nithin, can you build Zerodha today? I'd say no, it's not possible, right? Because the bus has moved, right? As in, I can't go back and do what I did in 2010 and 2020 without investors' capital.
You don't have that luxury of time.
Yeah, we don't have the luxury, because when we started, there was a 3-4 year head start we got, and there was the first competitor came in only after 3-4 years, right? And so we could kind of take it easy, without having to raise capital. So I think I don't think anyone should cut copy paste. I think the first question to ask is, in our business is almost like playing a sport, right? And in a sport, you need some kind of an edge on your competition, right? If all people are doing the same things, you can't win, right? As in, so either, like, one of the decisions was either you have to be deep pockets, or you have to have some kind of other kind of an edge, right? Otherwise, because right now the deep pocket guys usually win, right? And the deeper the pocket, the longer he lasts. The more stupid kind of deals you can keep throwing the customer. So there's no way the non-deep
pocket. You're mentioning SoftBank here, I see, but
no, I mean, not just that. I'm saying, the last 2-3 years has been quite crazy, right? As in terms of how much money people are willing to pay to acquire a customer, right? And it is not possible to play that game unless you go and raise more money, right? Or else you need to say that, I'm not in this business of acquiring customer paying money. I'll do something else to get that customer, right? Which doesn't, yeah.
Just to interrupt you here, you mentioned the fact that bringing in investors actually has obligations. Would you say, and this is something we touched upon, when we were talking earlier on, would you say that having investors who really come from a certain mold, so there are investors who funded Google, there are investors who funded something else, so they're familiar with those models. So would
Right.
you say that very often having an investor sort of forces you into a business model?
It's possible, and see, the thing is, a lot of investors bring a lot of synergies along with them, right? As in, they help the businesses grow as well. Right?
Absolutely, yeah.
One of the things that we realized when looking at investors back when we had the opportunity was we didn't even see the synergy in the sense. See, Indian broking is a very it's while it's a really old industry, there has not been a lot of funding that's happened in this industry, right? As in this whole
Yeah,
broking being fintech, etc., is only a last 2 3 years story, right?
true.
And no one really has the experience of knowing what is that audience out there. And most AMCs in India haven't been built on back of investor money, right? So there's no particular skill set the investor, at least we didn't spot those skill sets that would kind of give us some benefit more than just the money, right? But that said, in a lot of other industries, investors bring a lot of bring a lot of value for the founders, especially for people who are starting off, who have to learn quite a bit quite fast. So I'm not saying you should while this whole being bootstrapped seems very heroic because you're one of the only few doing it, right? But then it isn't very easy. The odds of it working is actually quite less. The reason you see so few bootstrap startups is because most of them perished,
Yeah,
uh,
absolutely.
and only the ones who are there at the right place, right time survived. So it's about what feels right for you as a founder. And what feels right for you as a business. I mean, if it requires capital, I think you should go raise it.
And how are you different? You said you invest a lot. So how are you different from some of the other people who invest?
Right. So the thing is, Nikhil, my younger brother, he manages most of our personal money, and so we have a large public market exposure. The private one, what we've been doing, we do it under this name called Rain Matter Capital, which is like a fund incubator. So around 2015-16 is when we realized that the markets in India is very shallow, and we said the way to grow in this industry is actually to go try expanding the market, right? And what we were doing as Zerodha, which was offering a trading platform or offering our education initiative, which we've done very well, was not enough. We said someone has to come build these niche user experiences on top of us. Say, India probably needs a Uber or a WhatsApp kind of a movement for investing in trading. So what we did was we started inviting startups to come build on top of us. We said, here we have solved as Zerodha the problem of execution. Can we solve the problem of user experience, which can potentially expand the markets in India, right? So we kind of throw it out local, and startups started working with us. When they came to us, we realized that they needed capital as well, as in so we said, what, we'll start cutting checks. So anywhere between around 2 crores to 10 crores, in that range we started cutting checks for these companies. And then it became a fund of sorts. But all the investments that we have done till now, I mean, the intent has just been impact. It was never done with any other ROI in mind. I mean, the only ROI for us was, can it help a retail investor trader in the market, and can it expand the Indian capital market ecosystem? Right. So that was essentially the basis on which we invested. And some of these guys have built some of the coolest trading and investing platforms. So it's kind of worked quite well for us until now.
So, when you say that you invited other startups, bootstrapped most of them to come and build on top of your platform, in a sense, you're doing what UPI has done, or, if you look at the whole India stack, that,
Right.
you had certain APIs which you put out there and people came and built on top of that. And eventually what emerged was a more powerful, magnet for, and it had better user experience. So what are the few things that some of these startups have built on top of your platform,
Right.
which people are using? If you can just tell us a little bit about that.
Sure, sure. I mean, I think the most popular is this company called Small Case, who has built
Small case.
Small Case. They have built a thematic investing platform or idea. So the thing is, one of the problem most retail investors have is they don't understand individual stocks. I mean, we all have broad ideas about certain industries or certain themes, Like for example, I remember when GST was getting introduced, a lot of people knew that some companies will benefit out of GST and some won't, right? They knew that GST is coming soon, right? Uh, so a small case has a basket of stocks that will benefit out of GST, right? So instead of buying a stock, you can actually buy the idea itself, right? So you have this bunch of ideas which are listed as a basket of stocks. Now the good thing about small case is that because it's a basket of stocks, it's a portfolio of stocks, so there's diversification of sort. And the big issue with a lot of traders, investors is that they take concentrated risk, and when they take concentrated risk, you're always essentially one incident away from becoming, losing a lot of money, right? And small case kind of, because of the structure, it gets people to invest into a portfolio, reduces risk, and gets them like active participation in the markets. There is Sensible, who's built a very nice options trading platform. There is Streak, which has built a very nice, like a backtesting trading platform for non-programmers, right? So there is Learn App, which has built an education platform. There's FinShots, who's trying to make a lot of these financial news easy. So it's all, it's kind of broad. There are different startups working on different things there.
You talked about how one of the perils of getting investors coming in, and it's not just because of the investors, but one of the perils of doing business is doing the cut and paste model. In fact, today's newspapers have the story on how Hike, this Kevin Mittal hike, which is meant to be a sort of WhatsApp. He thought it would be an improved WhatsApp, but then it just shut down because it didn't have the volumes and stuff like that. Yeah. So would you say that this is a problem that a lot of Indian apps are going to be facing, that they're just trying to look at the same model or replicating what was there in the West, so it's not really going to work?
Right, right. Yeah. No, I think this whole exact cut copy paste for India has never really worked. No, I think the ones that have done well have done some changes. Like I think Swiggy, Zomato, even Ola, you might say Ola is a copy of Uber, but actually the way
Yeah.
they've gone about building Ola is actually very different than, while the user experience might seem similar, but the backend is actually quite different. And I think, and these are all, companies I think, that we as Indians have to be proud of, that saying, they've come out of India. So, no, I think one of the reasons why a lot of this cut copy paste, that reference happens is because every time an investor comes from, say, the US, right, the easiest way to relate to him is to say, you are this of this country, right? As in, like,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
for example, like we started in 2010, right? Robinhood started in 2000, I think 14, 15. Right? If I were to meet a US guy, right, his first question is like, can you tell me what do you do, right?
Who
And
are you?
then,
Yeah.
yeah, right. And then my easiest way to explain who we are is to say, what, we do something like Robinhood of, in the US, right? So I don't have to waste 30 minutes
Yeah.
of my time explaining,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely.
And I think a lot of us Indians, get sucked into that, is that we forcibly try to kind of, refer to a US company just to make our company relatable, right? And that's how, but that's it. US is, at the end of the day, is a much larger economy, and they're probably 10, 15 years ahead of us. So a lot of ideas, it's very tough to come with original business ideas, right? I think, and US is so far ahead that maybe whatever idea you pick up, someone has already probably given a shot at it in the US. So you have to, but when the way you build a business, I think you have to do it very India specific, because the Indian audience is completely different to the way the US audience is.
One of the points that comes up in the context of having investors, in fact, this is a point which I think the first person to bring it up in a very forceful manner was Sanjeev Bikhchandani, when he talked about that combinator, Y Combinator, and he was talking about how they were encouraging the startups to flip. I mean, does flipping sort of worry you? Because at one level, when I look at it, if somebody else is bringing in the money and that guy wants you to incorporate in Singapore, then what is so wrong with it? What is
Right.
your view on that? Is it a problem? Is it not a problem?
No, see, the thing is, like, I think, like, I personally think we should try to keep the wealth of this country in this country, like, to be very honest, I mean, but I think it's happened for many centuries now. And, if there's wealth being created, I think we need to try do whatever to keep it in this country, because, that's how we as a country will grow together, right? So, I mean, that's my broad view on just doing structural changes just to save on some taxes and etc., right? Or just to make it easier for an investor. I don't think Indians should just go about moving a lot of wealth out of this country. About when investor comes, see the person investing, he's also obligated to someone else, right? As in, a lot of these VCs and private equity guys, they've raised money from someone else and they're obligated to give them a return. So they will do whatever they have to do to make that return for their investor, right? I mean, it's just a food cycle, right? As in, the way a startup is obligated to the VC is obligated to someone else, right? As in, and everyone's gonna push whoever's below the food cycle to make a buck. So and as a startup, I think as a founder, you have to be ready for that, right? As in, it's just that I think what founders need to be sure about is that when selling the story of why invest in your company, I think everyone has this. I mean, most founders have this problem of exaggerating the opportunity, right, to be able to raise money or whatever, right? And because once you sell the story, you have to stick to the story, right? And a lot of time, I think a missell can haunt the founder for a long time, right? So it's important to, I think, under promise, over deliver versus over promise, under deliver, right? Uh, and yeah, so I think those things are important when raising money from investors.
Yeah, but when I was talking about flipping, you're saying it's a good idea to try and keep India's wealth of ideas within India. But if the investment is coming from abroad, it's a bit much to expect that you can keep the idea in India. That's what I was asking.
Correct. Yeah.
So what are the 3 or 4 things the government or somebody needs to do, or whoever needs to do to make sure the Indian investors come and put in more money? People like you, Mohandas Pai, I mean,
No, I mean,
what do you need to do?
I think the issue is India is a poor country at the end of it, right? As in, I mean, unfortunately, I think we're growing as an economy. Maybe in 10, 20, 30 years, we'll be a large, powerful country with a lot of wealth within this country looking to allocate capital. I think what I think the government needs to do is to encourage people to think about moving money away from gold, bank deposits, and real estate, right? Because today what happens is, once the money goes into these assets, they get locked in,
Yeah,
right?
it's dead. It's dead. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's not really helping the economy in any way, right? I think incentives have to be made to get people to actually look at investing, right? I mean, we need people of this country to be backing the entrepreneurs of this country. And if that were to happen, I don't think, you have to rely on foreign capital as much as we rely today, right? And yeah, so I think maybe find whatever ways for that to be enabled as such. But I think there is change. I mean, I think by the time, like I can see people in my generation, uh, we will all probably invest a lot in Indian entrepreneurs, right? As in, as we grow older, um, uh, you know. So I think that change is happening. So in 5 years, 10 years, this current generation of 30 to 50-year-olds, as they grow older, as they accumulate more money, they will constantly keep looking at investing into entrepreneurs in this country. I think we're just lagging the US by maybe 20, 30 years in that sense. So
Okay. In the context of what you're saying that we are like, that we that people like you will be investing a lot more. Is the sort of environment in India also changing in the sense that when you look at Silicon Valley, there's a university system, there was a financial system, everything sort of pulled together. Is it pulling together in India right now?
uh, I mean, it's coming kind of coming into track. I mean, I don't think it's there yet, but I think a lot of these enablers are getting put in the right places for this to happen, right? So I mean, firstly, there's a lot of interest. I think usually, like, the first big enabler for all of this to happen is essentially greed, right? As in, if people
Yeah.
make people make money investing into startups, they will, more people will want to invest, right? And that has happened over the last 3 4 years, right? Because the first, I think, between 2010 to 15, not a lot of local players really participated in wealth creation, by investing in startups, right? But over the last 3 4 years, you see a lot of angels, a lot of I mean, I think it needs to be made easier for founders to raise money from angels, etc. But because today there are a bunch of gray areas around that. But I think things are falling into place, and as and when India has large outcomes, in terms of wealth creation, I think more and more people will start looking at investing behind founders and entrepreneurs starting off.
One of the points made, India boasts of being having the third largest number of unicorns in the world. But when you look at number one and number two, we are way behind them. So I mean, what is the bottleneck? Is it our scientific pool is not big enough, or is it, as you said, just a time thing that that people have started getting into this now, and over time it will keep increasing? I mean, how do you look at that?
No, I think the problem with the country is the revenue pool, right? I mean, we have a lot of people in this country, right? But then, for building large businesses, you should be able to make money from those people, right? And unfortunately, in our country, the issue is, I think the problem is that 5 to 6 crore Indians file income tax returns.
Yeah.
Like less than 2 crore Indians make make more than 5 lakh rupees a year as as an income. So your revenue pool is so small that it's very tough to build large businesses, large valuable businesses. So it's just a matter of time, and as and when the country, we go from 3 trillion to 5 trillion or more, as and when more money lands in the hands of people, more valuable businesses can be built in this country.
Okay, the other question is odd in the context of of venture capital, and everybody looks at apps like yours or businesses as yours as purely privately funded or privately grown, whereas actually the role of the state, I want to talk to you about that. So for example, if you didn't have GPS, you may not have had an Uber. So if you look at the internet itself, it came out of the US defense business. So what do you think is actually the role of the government here? And I'll talk to you about Aadhaar and UPI later on, but what is your first thing in terms of what should the government be doing? Does it have a role at all?
Right. No, I mean, I think government is at the center of all of this. I think, I don't think, I think the problem is we always look at government for freebies. I don't think it's about freebies, it's about putting enablers.
Yeah.
Right? Just to give you an example, the only reason I think the business is at size that we are at today is because of Aadhaar, right? Because until 2016,
Exactly.
onboard a customer, it was a 40-page document. It used to take us 2 to 3 weeks, and there was no way in hell we could add 100,000 customers in a month, right? So in 2016, when Aadhaar, we started onboarding customers using Aadhaar, we were at 100,000 customers. We are at 4 million plus today, right? We add 200,000 customers a month versus 100,000 customers in 6 years, right? And the only reason is because you can onboard a customer online, right? So now Aadhaar actually, was that enabler that enabled for a business like us to actually grow large, right? So similarly, UPI has helped just, like for example, UPI for IPO, which got launched last year, right? And within 1 year, we contribute 10% of all IPO applications in this country, right? Again, it wouldn't have happened if not for UPI, right? And like, for example, because the IRFC IPO is open right now, the last 2 3 days has been just so crazy in terms of new people wanting to apply IPOs, right? Opening accounts with us, and we can actually open an account, get into IPO within like a 1 day time. So I think government should do more of this. Like keep, and I think they've done. I think with this whole jam pack, the whole. I think they're just the right enablers for new age businesses like us to come leverage and build large businesses on top of. I think what can be a little easier, at least in the context of financial services firms, is we have this whole legacy of a baggage of sorts of firms which have done frauds, right? As in, there have been broking firms in the past who've gone down and lost customers' money, etc. So regulations almost gets quite stiff, right? And a lot of times these regulations can potentially stifle innovation. And I think like one of those wish lists that I have is to make these regulations a little more easier. So it kind of it enables innovation of sorts.
Has there been any kind of government program that you have tried to work with which hasn't worked out? And I'll tell you why I'm asking you this.
Right.
Is that if you look at, for example, in the context of COVID, a lot of people are arguing that this is India's time to do a lot of telemedicine, and you can really jumpstart the whole process. And the problem that India has with poor health, coverage can be sort of, can be dealt with to a certain extent because of COVID. Now, whether it's health or whether it's education, things, the government of India spends a lot of money in these things every year. So if the government is to take on your let's say you develop a health app and the government says, okay, I'm going to use this health app, then obviously it gives a tremendous boost. So are there some government programs or government schemes that you think you could piggyback onto, or that or where you think the government can actually use people use apps like yours,
Right.
or platforms such as yours?
No, I mean, I think, see, the thing is, government has been looking at divesting for a while, right? And I mean, so maybe it's like the way you had this Jan Dhan account, maybe, there can be like one of those DMAT accounts where Indian, middle class kid get, access to buy into stocks of, PSU stocks, or maybe something like that. I mean, until now, we haven't really, I mean, see, the thing is, I think the business of stockbroking is catering to the top 2-3% of this country, right? As in people who have the money. And then most government programs are around for the remaining 97% or 95% of the country, right? So we as a company haven't been able to leverage on any such programs. But I think one of the opportunities here is that in our audience, maybe, like I said, when you start divesting, maybe give discounts to retail,
What I say, like, for example, if you want to boost agri-tech, now, frankly, you can create the best agri-tech app in terms of, talking about what kind of crop you'll have, predicting crop output and stuff like that. But,
Right.
If the government starts using your thing, it just gives it a completely different, or let's say hackathons, let's say organized by the government to solve some health problem or something like that. I mean,
Right.
what I'm trying to ask you is that something, we had Ravi Shankar Prasad who inaugurated this conference here.
Right.
So I'm trying to figure out that what exactly the role for the government. Should the government be looking at every problem that India has or that the government deals with and just organize hackathons? Is that something that the government should do? Should that be government policy? That's what I'm trying to ask you.
Oh, right. No, absolutely. I think today a lot of answers to large government problems probably lies in technology, and I think it makes a lot of sense to go figure ways to partner with existing companies. If say government came to us and said, Nathan, this is a problem that we have in financial markets in India. Can you help us solve? I would give my life to solve that problem, right? So and I think I know at least 10 other founders of really large companies who would do the same, right? So I think, yeah, if you make it inclusive, I think a lot of people who've done well and who have access to, people who can solve problems we can come together very easily.
And if you look at iSpurt, for example, in Bangalore, that's what iSpurt is doing. Whether it's like, on lending, for example, iSpurt is looking at leveraging the whole UPI network, or looking at GST based lending and things like that. So I
Right.
mean, so basically you're saying, let's say we do one hackathon a month, the government did that. Would that be a great idea?
Yeah, no, I mean, hackathon is a great way to enable conversations to start. But a hackathon in itself, I don't know if something can really be solved on a hackathon. I mean, the government scale problems, right? I don't think it can be really done on a 2-day hackathon event or something like that. I think it has to be a longer, more engaged kind of interaction for solving such large problems. But hackathon is a great way for the government to put the intent out there to say, what, we are looking at partnering, with technology firms to solve large government problems.
So, I mean, if you had to solve a problem, what is the problem that you think that you can solve? Well, I mean, like, let's say disinvestment.
Right.
Disinvestment has been a miserable failure over God knows how many years. I mean, apart from that little time during Vajpayee's, regime, when they were
Right.
actually privatizing, disinvestment has been a miserable failure for most of the years. What
Right.
would you do? I mean, do you think that's something you could fix? At least, I mean, in terms of maybe not privatization, but in terms of actually just selling off the existing companies. I mean, is that?
No, I mean, see, if it was distributing good assets to people, I think we could do it, to retail and get retail. The thing is, when someone owns a stock of a company, right, there is a sense of ownership in a way, right? As in, if I own, shares of X company, then I feel a certain way for X company, right? So I mean, that we can do very well. If the government of India wanted, some shares of their good companies to be sold to retail, someone like us can do that very well. I think the other problem, I think what we need to solve in this country is to just grow the capital market ecosystem. Like I said earlier, right? As in, you need people of this country to kind of back entrepreneurs, right? That's when the country will do well, right? Not go buy gold or real estate or keep cash in the account, in there with them, right? So there, we could potentially help the government solve those problems, right? I mean, that's because that's core competency to what we do as a business as well.
One big problem that we've got is that, I mean, as you said, there's just 2-3% of people, maybe even less, are buying shares in. One big problem that we've got in India is that by and large, the unorganized sector worker has no pension, no savings, and stuff like that. What do you, I mean, is there some way that that we could use technology to be able to garner some of those savings,
Right.
In the sense that, I mean, obviously a guy who's a rickshaw puller can't give you X number of thousand rupees per month. He can maybe give it to you, I mean, are there some solutions like that which are working?
Yeah.
Because this pension is something which we really need a lot of work on. I mean, are there some things working there?
Yeah, no, I mean, we are. I mean, so we've applied for an asset management company license because I think, financial products for first timers is a little complex today. Like, if you want to go buy a mutual fund, suddenly the word mutual fund is complex. Then, hybrid funds, large cap funds, multi cap funds, right? As in, how will a rickshaw puller ever invest in something like that, right? So, I think better products have to be made for that, that audience, which they can very easily relate to, right? As in, and find different ways to sell it to them, right? And so that's there on our list of things to do. I mean, that's
like sachet products for a rickshaw puller kind of a thing.
Absolutely, yeah, right. And where, because for him the money is a lot more important. So you can't even take full equity exposure, right? It has to be, the composition of the product also has to be in such a way that you don't unnecessarily take too much risk for them. So it's at work, so it's on our list of things to do.
So by when does that come out, for example?
We have applied for a license, so this whole COVID kind of delayed that whole application process. So hopefully this financial year end is when we should be able to. This 2021 year end is when we should be able to do something around this.
What is your view on, for example, the government? I think the government made an announcement yesterday. I think the Prime Minister made it that he was going to have 1,000 crore seed money for small companies, and they have a Startup India fund and things like that. Do you think the government should actually be getting into something like this, or it's more important to look at enabling things like creating a UPI, creating an Aadhaar? I mean, should the government be getting into funding, or should the government just be looking at creating the big thing? So we've got our own satellite navigation system, for example, which is going to rival GPS when it starts working. So what should the government's role be? Should it be financing people at all?
I mean, I think, like I said, right? I mean, earlier, there is this whole problem that a lot of wealth being created today is happening outside this country, right? And if government can somehow, because for us, I think in India, the biggest investor essentially is our government, right? So it's not a bad idea if they decide to put a small amount of capital and say, what, we want to invest in Indian startups. So it kind of sets the right intent out there as well, saying that the government is kind of behind these startups as well. I think it's important to put the right people to allocate that money because you don't want that experience. You want, if something starts like that, you want that to get bigger, right? I mean, if government's saying, I want to do 10,000 crores this year, they want to come back in 3 years and say, what, we made 50,000 crores out of the 10,000 crores we invested. Now we're going to put all this 50,000 crores behind, right? As in, like think of it almost like how professional private equity guys think, right? I mean, if there is a department in the government who can think like it, and who have long-term incentives to be like that, because you don't want the person investing to move between departments, right? I mean, he has to be there in the life cycle of the fund, so he is responsible for the investments that are made, right? And which is not a bad thing, actually,
But that's a massive if that you put in. If people have, I mean, can you imagine the government telling you if they were an investor in your company that have you used an L1 when you decided which computers to buy, or which cloud to use?
Yeah, I don't know if as long as the government's acting as a passive investor, like how a lot of these proper professional investors, then it's okay. I don't know if government should be interfering in running in startups running their businesses. I think because those interferences never really work. For I mean, wherever you've seen a lot of interference from the investors into the running of a company, the founders have typically lost interest running the business. I mean, that's been shown many times over and over again, right? So I was just talking about government being like a passive investor in the Indian startup ecosystem.
You talked about how Aadhaar helped you, and then you talked about UPI, and now, for example, there's this Nandan Nilekani is supposed to be working on this thing called Beacon, which is which is basically APIs, which will, so let's say you place your order on a cab on Uber or Ola, but let's say a Meru or somebody even on WhatsApp can actually be able to access that and fulfill that order for you.
Right.
You know, and we've talked about the possibility of GST based lending, and lot of lending based on flows and things like that. So do you see a place where these apps like this or these startups could be India's next software moment? Like
Right.
X number of years ago, Infosys, Wipro, these were the big rising stars of India.
Right.
Now there's also this medicine is pharma has always been a big star, and with COVID it's got another big fillip. Do you see these kind of technology companies or ideas? Do you see them being the next big thing?
Well, so those aggregator apps of sorts, right? I mean, they haven't really scaled anywhere in the world. And I mean, people aggregating across multiple businesses and putting it in one place, right? As in, like, so I don't know
Super
how
app,
that will play out. Yeah, like, no, not a super app. I mean, in India, super apps also struggled. Like I'm saying, if there was a way to get Uber, Ola, I mean, all their orders to kind of flow through one app,
aggregate from one place,
right? And that is it's a complex problem to solve, right? As in, and it's and the incentives are not really aligned now with the underlying businesses as well, right? So
That's a big problem, yeah.
that's so it hasn't really scaled or become large businesses anywhere as such. I mean, super apps, I mean, like Alibaba and all has done great job in China, but in India the whole super app thing hasn't really played out as such, right? As in there isn't like one super app as such. I think on the mobile, to get a super app right is extremely complex, because you have the 6-7 inch screen. As soon as you add one or two extra menu, it just clutters, and then your drop offs increases and etc. So we need to see how that plays out. At Zerodha, we have taken the absolute different approach. So we have a different app for every product of ours. So we don't like to combine it. We've almost taken it like a Google approach to this. How you have Google Calendar, Gmail, Chat, and all of them being different apps. That's how we've gone after it, because then you can offer a clutter-free, very minimalistic, nice-looking app to your customers.
Do you have a view on data protection? There's a lot of this stuff. I mean, in the context of WhatsApp, that your data is being shared. WhatsApp says it's not being shared. Today, the ministry has written to WhatsApp saying that we want you to put your new privacy policy on hold. Do you have a view on this data thing, or do you feel that that it's okay? The kind of data that is being shared is not really that sensitive, or it is required sometimes to complete transactions, which is the point that Mastercard and Visa and all have been making. What is your view on data protection?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it should be up to the user. Like, for example, if I don't like my WhatsApp data protection policy, I have an option to go use Signal, for example, right? As long as that option is there with the user, I think it's okay, right? And you let the user decide what he wants to do with his data, right? If I'm having a conversation with my friend about school days, I maybe like it on WhatsApp, right? But if I'm doing business talk, something private, I might want to do it on Signal. So I think as long as the option is available, it should be okay for the.
One problem with what you're saying, I mean, not a problem, but is really the issue of interoperability. I think if you look at in the earlier days, if you were on one browser, you could move to another. Then they started allowing you to move your bookmarks and your history onto a different browser. One problem is that like, if you want to move from WhatsApp to Signal or vice versa, you can't actually take your chats. I mean, you can take your chats in a text form, but it really serves no purpose. Do you think that in future government should be sort of saying that if an app has to be authorized, it has to have interoperability? I mean, do you think that's something which one should be looking at?
The problem is, the more the government interferes, the more it'll stifle innovation, right? I don't know if you had something like that, if there'll be a next app that will come through in this country, right? So you don't want that to be happening. So I think like I said, I think the option should be with the user, and generally, I think there's a lot of people talking about the role of the big tech companies, right? I mean, I think the issue here is actually how these businesses have become so large that they've essentially control our life in all forms. Maybe that's a bigger problem to solve, as in how.
So, do you think that they should be broken up? I mean, that whether the U.S. Congress and all that seems to be their view that you break them up. But
Right.
is that your view? Because these companies also innovate a lot. They spend a lot on R&D. So what is your view?
Yeah, no, I mean it's a tricky place, It's I don't really have a solid view on it, but I think it's a problem if three companies in the world control most of the world, right? And how do you solve it? I don't know. I mean, is breaking up the right solution? I don't know about it, but just these three companies becoming so large is probably an issue.
Also because as we saw in the case of Hike, some of these tech companies naturally lend themselves to a monopoly situation. So I mean, you're going to get people if you will move to an app because people are using that app. So I mean, if you
Yeah.
break it up, then you break it up right now, but then after another 2 years, it becomes another big monopoly again, yeah, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think the issue is not it being like a messenger app. The issue is another platform being able to access this, whatever is on the messenger app, right? And so, I mean, like at least in the regulated businesses, there are restrictions in place. Like for example, we have a restriction which doesn't allow. A broker to be more than 15% of the open
Yeah,
interest on the
yeah,
exchanges.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
I think UPI has now put in that 33%
30%, yeah.
restriction. Yeah.
Well, that's why I
So,
brought in interoperability because once you have interoperability,
right,
theoretically everybody can move away from Facebook onto my book, and
right,
everybody can move on away from WhatsApp to my app. I mean,
correct.
you're
Yeah.
just building in competition like that. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, I don't know why would Facebook allow, you know, uh, yeah, it's a tough one. It's,
I mean, Facebook might allow it because Facebook feels that that's one way to get the regulators off my back. That I
right,
allow, Google, for example, many years ago had this service called Google Takeout. I don't know whether
right,
you've ever used it, but
no,
you can go to Google Maps and you can say, I want my entire map history. So they'll give it to
right,
you in a certain format. I don't know whether that format is good enough for you to export it onto another map thing, but I presume it is. So
right,
the reason why Google would have done it was that you want to be the good guy, that I'm doing the right thing, that I've got this thing called Google Takeout, but people don't want to go. What can I do? But so I mean, one possibility that companies may actually do it because they feel that this is how I'll satisfy the regulator. I don't know.
maybe.
I mean, that maybe.
Yeah, no, but it just seems like, the more regulation, more regulated this will get, the more innovations will get stifled, So, I don't know. I mean, I don't know what the right. It's a really complex problem, actually.
Okay, but just to get back to that, journalists love a headline. So
Right,
is this India's software moment? Is this the next phase of software? These products.
right.
Do you think that this is going to be this big thing that when people look at India, they say, okay, India is going to provide us easy solutions to complex problems at a low price, like what you've done. I mean, do you think that this will be that moment for India? Do you think we are there?
Yeah, I think just to the last January we were at 2 million customers, and I thought the size of our markets in India is a certain size. Our target audience is a certain size, and I didn't know how the target audience will ever grow, right? But I think the behavior change this year, in India has just been phenomenal, right? As in people have gone digital, and uh, I've had friends from the last 20 years who knew that I have something to do with stock markets. They've all
Hmm.
opened accounts this year, because they were sitting at home, they had time to think about their finances, they did a little bit of research. So I think the target audiences for all digital customer tech first kind of businesses has grown significantly this year. So this potentially can be that moment, right? There's no two doubts about it.
Okay, I'm just, it's been a pleasure talking to you. I'm not going to monopolize you. I'm going to open up the floor to our questioners. There's 3 or 4 questions we'll take.
Sure, sure.
Shivani, do you want to just get us there?
Sure, sir. So, first question we have is what kind of challenges you might foresee in the coming years?
And do you want to tell us who this question is for or from? I mean, from or
You both can take these questions.
no, who is it from?
This is
No,
a
obviously the questions are for him, but who is this
okay,
question
okay.
from?
Actually, we don't have name here.
Right.
Okay, never mind. Yeah.
Yes.
Sure. No, I see. The thing is, personally, I've been investing, trading in the markets for the last 20 plus years, and I have no reason why. No, I can't come up with a reason for why the stock markets are at all-time highs, right? So, uh, because there is pressure in the underlying economy, not just in India, across the world. So I'm generally, I think stock markets are trying to, kind of factor in the best case outcome of all of this, whatever's happening to the world. And my guess is that it will probably not be the best case outcome. So, it'll probably be lesser than the best case outcome. So, I think some of the I think what happened to the economy over the last 1 year is going to show up, at some point of time. Um, so there are multiple challenges. So, while this whole digital adoption has gone up significantly, but I think there's a bigger problem in the overall economy in terms of spending, in terms of uh, employment and all of that. So those will come back
So
to.
digital is not a panacea. It can only grow to the extent the overall economy is doing well. That's clearly
Absolutely
what
right.
you're saying. Yeah.
Right.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, Shivani.
The next question we have is, what additional customer segments are you planning to target in the future?
Yeah. Okay. So, see, the thing is, one of those things we haven't done till now as a business is advisory. Until now, we haven't gotten into this business of advising customers to do the right thing. We have stayed away saying we want to be execution only. But I think we've realized that that is not enough, right? We need to help our customers do the right things as well. So that essentially is our next play, which is to find ways to help our customers take the right kind of decisions. So how do we do it? Like last year, we have launched a platform called Nudge, which kind of tells people when they're making mistakes when they're trading. For example, if you're buying a penny stock, which is very risky, the platform tells, you can lose a lot of money by investing in this, and gets a person off that trade, right? So we're building it within the platform, but we are trying to build different kind of nudges, right? As in, say, if someone is buying a lot of one stock, right? Can we tell him that portfolio diversification is important? You shouldn't buy too much of one stock, and kind of nudge him away from doing that mistake, right? Yeah, so I mean, help people make the portfolio, help people stick to the goals they've set in terms of their savings. So yeah, so these are some of the things that we plan.
Last question, Shivani. Huh?
Sure, sir. So, in your opinion, in what way a mutual fund awareness can be increased in India?
Just by making the product simpler. So I think there's a lot of campaigns that have happened around mutual fund sahi and all, but I think today, like we spoke earlier, I think right from the way the mutual fund products are designed, I think is a little complex. It has a lot of legacy issues because the industry is like 20-25 years old, and if today if you had a 21-year-old and you had to tell him what is a hybrid fund or what is a multi-cap fund, it people don't have attention span today, as in because of all these noise, because of mobile phones, right? And then you probably get 3 to 5 seconds with your audience, and you have to be able to convince whatever you have to convince in those 3 to 5 seconds, and you can't do it if you start the conversation saying it's a hybrid fund or a multi-cap fund, right? So I think it's just redesigning mutual funds to be able to easily appeal to first time investors. That's essentially what has to be done with mutual funds.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you, Shivani. Nithin, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, and I hope our audience enjoyed it as much as I did. And I look forward to more interactions like this with you in the future.
Thanks
It's
so
been a
much.
real pleasure. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Mr. Jain. Thank you, Mr. Kamath. I would also like to thank our partner, our diamond partner, Google, our platinum partners in Mobi and Facebook, digital growth partner, Microsoft, omni-channel partner, Zendesk, customer experience partner, Adobe, and customer engagement partner, Infobip. Thank you, and stay tuned for other discussions.
Thank you.